and a silent invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. Can I get the roll call, please?
John Junko.
Here.
Bo Bofamy. Tom Jordan.
Here.
Lance Green.
Is here.
Newton White.
Here.
Stan Schmidt.
Here.
Chair Mills Benet.
Here. Before I open up, well, let's get consideration of the meeting minutes first. Can I get a motion for that?
Will we accept the minutes?
Second.
Your turn.
Oh, can I get a roll call? I thought she was just going to automatically start.
I'll type in. John Junko.
Yes.
Tom Jordan.
Yes.
Lance Green.
Yes.
Newton White.
Yes.
Stan Schmidt.
Yes.
Chair Mills Benet.
Yes. Before I open up these agenda items, I just want to talk to you guys for a minute. I know there's a lot of you here tonight that are going to want to get up and talk, and that's totally fine. Please be cognizant that you only get 3 minutes on the timer. And if somebody has already made the same point that you want to make, please don't come up or try to make a different point. We don't want a lot of repeated, making the minutes go longer, the meeting go longer. Once somebody else has already made the point, we understand, and we just need to move on to the next topic. Okay?
Can you say ditto? Can you say ditto?
Ditto. So, that being said, we're going to open 2 applications at once. Case number 20-200000002, large-scale future land use map amendment, Osprey Apartments. And Penelope is here to talk to us. And we have case number 206000003 for the rezoning of Osprey Apartments on the south of Madeline Avenue between Clyde Boulevard and Bruner Road.
Thank you. Good evening, Penelope Cruz, Planning, City of Port Orange. So we have both items opened, so I'm just going to speak freely about both of them, and after my presentation, the applicant is here and would also like to give a presentation as well on their items. The applicant, on behalf of the property owner, requests to amend the future land use designation for the 35 acres from office residential transition and commercial to urban high-density residential, and to rezone the subject property from planned unit development to moderate density residential R3M. The property is located on the east side of Clyde Boulevard, south of Madeline Avenue between Clyde Morris and Bruner. The applicant's development applications to change the future land use and zoning on the property does not affect the comprehensive plan regarding the extension of Bruner Road from its current southern terminus to Clyde Morris Boulevard. If the future land use and rezoning applications are approved, staff has discussed with Volusia County and the potential developer about maintaining the right-of-way for the possible extension of Bruner Road in the future, but not constructing Bruner Road from its terminus to Clyde Morris Boulevard as part of the proposed development. So just some background on the property. It does have a current future land use designation of office residential transition, which is a mixed use category that allows office, commercial, multifamily, as well as commercial land use. It is zoned planned unit development, PUD, without a master development agreement. The subject property was previously part of a slightly larger 53-acre PUD called the Palms PUD, which was approved in 2007. You can see the concept plan there for the Palms PUD on the screen. The PUD allowed for 451 multifamily units and 187,000 square feet of commercial. So that's what was previously approved on the subject site. The Palms PUD expired in 2009 and remained vacant. A portion of the property, about 18 acres, was rezoned to the Palmetto Point PCD, Planned Commercial Development, and it was developed with commercial development, including the Walmart neighborhood market. So you can see on the future land use map here what I was just talking about. On the left, you see the pink and the red, which is the pink is the office residential transition, the red, the commercial that's currently on the property, and the proposed land use of urban high density residential to the right. The proposed future land use amendment is generally consistent with the pertinent goals, objectives, and policy of the city's comprehensive plan. It is compatible with adjacent parcels, and the proposed multifamily use provides as a transitional use between the more intense commercial development and the existing single-family homes across Brunner Road. According to the infrastructure analysis that's in the staff report, the proposed future land use amendment is a net decrease in impacts to public infrastructure except for recreation. All public infrastructure has adequate capacity, however, to accommodate the proposed amendment. The proposed land use amendment, land use category also meets the locational criteria for the urban high density residential in that it's located adjacent to a commercial node and along an arterial roadway. However, the proposed amendment is not consistent with one of the policies in the comprehensive plan regarding the retention of existing commercial acreage already designated on the future land use map. The 35-acre amendment area would result in a net decrease of approximately 8.82 acres of land in the city currently designated for commercial. So if approved, that 8.82 acres would change from a commercial use to the residential use. However, as you can see in the graphic before you in the overall red boundary, there would still be approximately 40 acres of commercial land at that Clyde Morris Boulevard, Madeline Avenue commercial node. And of that 40 remaining acres of commercial land, 18 acres remain vacant and can be developed with commercial acreage. There's also existing vacant tenant spaces in the existing shopping centers that are there. So there are plenty of opportunities for additional commercial development in that existing node. The rezoning request from PUD to R3M, the moderate density multifamily residential, is a shift from that negotiated PUD zoning district to the conventional residential zoning district that uses the land development code to provide the development regulations. According to the R3M zoning district, it's intended to provide that moderate density multifamily development on relatively large tracts of land in single ownership with a maximum density of 12 units per acre. The proposed Osprey Point apartments are proposed at 384 units, which would be a 10.9 unit density, units per acre, which is less than the maximum allowed by the zoning as well as the land use. As was stated earlier, that prior PUD, the Palms PUD, allowed for 451 multifamily units, as well as the 187 square feet of commercial uses. That's now expired, so the property is left with this PUD zoning without an MDA. So when you're in that situation, the land development code doesn't provide for permitted uses or dimensional requirements for a property that's zoned PUD without an active MDA. So that's why they're looking to rezone the property to a conventional zoning category. The PUD zoning district is intended to provide a flexible zoning district for unique situations that can't otherwise be permitted by code. In this case, the developer is not looking for any deviations. They would like to be able to develop the property consistent with the land development code, so there was no need to go to a PUD zoning, which is why they felt comfortable going with the conventional zoning category, because they weren't looking for any deviations from the code. If approved, all future development, as you know, will have to go through the detailed technical review of our staff development review committee to make sure all requirements of the land development code, as well as the city's comprehensive plan, are met. The proposed development would have to be subject to concurrency regulations, including things like school and transportation concurrency. With regards to traffic, they would need to provide an up-to-date traffic impact analysis, most likely enter into traffic fair share and concurrency agreement to pay for part of the scheduled improvements for impacts to the roadway network, and they would also be required to comply with all federal, state, regional, and local regulations pertaining to environmental resources. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the proposed land use amendment and the rezoning, and as I said, the applicant is here to also provide a presentation on their application.
Before we move to the presentation for the application, John, any questions for Penelope?
Not right now, no, thank you.
Tom?
Yeah, Penny, if based on what the land use is right now, since the zoning is PUD, how would they develop under the existing land use that's sitting there? If we don't approve the residential multifamily use, how do we deal with that?
Well, they have two applications. They're proposing to change the land use and the zoning.
Yeah.
So if the land use amendment is not approved, then their proposal wouldn't fit, because the land use on the property right now is commercial.
Right.
And the mixed use office residential transition, they would like to do just multifamily. They're not interested in developing a commercial and a mixed use project.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we don't
Yeah.
change it, it's sitting there with office residential transition and commercial land use, but just a PUD that's expired. So they couldn't do anything right now, could they?
I mean, they could, if both of these applications were not approved, they could theoretically come back and, attempt to develop the property. They'd have to go through a public hearing process to establish a new PUD
Right.
or rezone with zoning consistent with the current future land use. But what they are proposing at this time, a 384 unit multifamily development, would not work with the current zoning. I mean, the
get
current
that.
land use.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what's sitting there right now.
But they do have entitlements as far as commercial and mixed-use development with the current land use. It's
I
just
get
the
that, yeah.
zoning.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. And is there any in this stage of the process? Is there any control over where vehicle access is for entrance and exits?
We do not have a site plan submitted at this time. However, the R3M zoning district does require that your main access is from the arterial roadway,
Okay.
which would be Clyde Morris. Typically, with larger developments like this, you look to have a secondary access for emergency purposes, for safety. Like I said, where that location is, staff does not have details on that. A site plan hasn't been submitted yet. What would be required at this point is that the main access be off Clyde Morris.
Okay, but I know it's not part of our decision here, but it's possible there could be access on the Bruner.
Potentially, right now, a portion of Bruner to the north is paved, and so if there were to be any future, if all this were to be approved and there were to be any access, it would be towards the north, just because based on feedback from the neighbors and council and everyone, at this time and in speaking with Volusia County, any proposal that would come forward would not pave the Bruner Road to make the full connection. We would just ensure we obtain the right-of-way, so that in the future, if the city ever wanted to do that, it would be, the right-of-way would be there, but we would not be requesting that the developer make that full connection.
Is there a right-of-way now south of
There's some, but not necessarily the full width. The plans call for, excuse me, tickle my throat. Excuse me. The land development code requires a 60-foot wide right-of-way, and so we would need additional right-of-way just to meet the requirement for that.
south of the terminus?
For
right
yes,
now?
where we can get it.
Is there a 60-foot right-of-way north? All the way
Most
to-
likely not, but you get it as things develop.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's all I had. Thank you.
Stan?
To kind of piggyback on one of the things Tom said, so right now,
Excuse me.
under the current situation, you got 8.8 acres that could be commercial, and then that eastern half, that could be multifamily housing?
So if you see, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor here, but the
Yeah.
red,
Yeah.
the red
Right,
area
that's the
is all
commercial
commercial.
Right.
The pink area in the boundary is a mixed-use category that can be developed in different scenarios. You could either do 100% office, institutional. You could do 75% office, 25% commercial. You could do 75% office, 25% multifamily under the current standards.
But you couldn't do all of that?
No, not
28
anymore.
acres or something like that.
When the original PUD was adopted in 2007,
Right.
that category, that office residential transition category, had different parameters.
Okay.
Back then, you could do 100% residential, and it also had a higher density. The percentage was reduced over time for the category citywide. The density was reduced over time citywide as well.
The little triangular portion that's kind of hanging out there that's coded Volusia County?
The striped one right here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that's not part of what we're looking at tonight?
No, sir. So that is an unincorporated enclave.
Really?
So that's not part of the city of Port Orange.
We're calling it.
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping all that stuff was gone away with, but we're still there.
Yeah, we still have a few pockets here and there. We've been
Yeah.
able over the past couple years to annex several, but there's still a few here and there.
Interesting.
You good?
For now, that's good.
Newton?
I'm good for now.
Lance?
So Penny, the squares that are in the blue, is that not the spot that we just talked about a month or two ago about it being a
DMS.
dump or city?
Not a dump.
What do you call it?
Debris management. Only if we have a
Debris
hurricane, which we're not going to
management,
have.
That's what.
Temporary
That's the word
dump.
I
I
was
mean,
looking
Mhm.
for.
It would be vacant. It would be vacant, hopefully all the time, because we're not going to have any more hurricanes.
But at the same token, we talked about Bruner Road, that nothing was gonna happen to Bruner Road on our end as
No.
far as the city goes, and the city owning that property, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's all I
Correct.
have for now.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
All
The
right.
applicant can come up and do their presentation to the board, please.
Okay, we can just advance forward.
Madam Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, my name is Jeff Brock, 444 Seabreeze Boulevard, Daytona Beach, Florida, representing the applicant, the Collier Companies. Just a brief overview of the Collier Companies. It's a privately, closely held company owned by Nathan Collier. He's based out of Gainesville, Florida. He's one of the largest apartment complex owners in the state of Florida. He owns 52 complexes. He's never sold a complex. He operates them, maintains them himself with his own employees. So this isn't a pension fund or an insurance company that's buying this and then going to sell it or put a management company in. Hit the key here. There's the site again. The little triangle cutout that we were talking about was a mobile home at one point. Yeah, I think it's vacant now. We tried to acquire it, but the owner thinks it's worth a lot more than it is. So, unfortunately, we tried. So that's that. Again, a little bit about the history that Penny went over. This was the Palms PUD development. A lot more residential proposed with commercial than what we're proposing now. We're looking at 384 units. I think it was 487 or something that was in there before. We think that residential is the way to go on this site. If you look at the commercial node up at Madeline and Clyde Morris, there's a lot of vacancies. Those out parcels in front of the marketplace haven't sold and been for sale for years. Across the street, there has been some vacancies as well. So later on in the presentation, you'll see a market study that Collier did showing that within a 5-mile radius of this property, the occupancy rates are 93, 95%. So we believe the demand is there. Your comprehensive land use plan calls for providing a variety of housing options to your residents, and we think that residential is the way to go. The existing land use, I think it was to your question, Mr. Jordan, what could be developed there if this project didn't go forward. And the 75%, 25% scenario is kind of shown there. We got the 75% office and 25% commercial space. You can see the square footages that would be allowed under the existing land use designations, or all office, as Penny mentioned. And we're proposing the high density residential allows 8 to 16 units per acre. We're looking at 384, so trying to stay away from the wetlands and some other things that there's not really a risk of developing a further density than what we're proposing. I'd like to bring up our traffic consultant to talk a little bit about the trips that would be generated under the current future land use versus what we're proposing. If you come on up. Before we start, I did want to mention that we did hold a neighborhood meeting It wasn't required, but we did. And I think if we could boil down the biggest concern, I think it was traffic. And so that's why we brought on our traffic consultant to talk about that a little bit more.
Good evening. Nelson Caparis with Lassiter Transportation Group out of Ormond Beach. So what we're showing here is that the trip generation based on the approved land use in the three scenarios, as well as the theoretical residential maximum and our proposed land use. So you can see, as far as the volume of traffic, what's already approved for this site, this is the maximum that somebody can come in here, already approved, can generate. What we're looking at with the number of units of dwelling units is much, much lower than what's already approved on the site. So on an hourly basis, we're looking at 138 trips and 169 trips AM and PM for this site. And that concern regarding Bruner Road, we're looking at 28 trips inbound and outbound in the morning and 34 in the evening during the peak hours. So it's not really all that high, and most of that trips that we are looking at in distribution within the network is really going east and coming back from the east. And most of this traffic is going north or south on Clyde Morris Boulevard. So.
Okay, thank you. Again, we've got some renderings of the product that the Collier builds. It's a Class A product. It's not subsidized housing. It's not workforce housing. It'd be a gated community. Whereas the Palms allowed 5 stories, we're only looking at 2 to 3 stories in a kind of a split that you see there. Clubhouse, pool, all the amenities. I think that was it. This is kind of a picture of inside of a unit. That's the clubhouse. Kind of. This is that market study showing what the occupancy rates are in the vicinity. Again, we believe that residential is the way to go over commercial. Therefore, we're asking for the future land use amendment.
The slide just previous to this one with kind of that, is that what your layout might look like?
That's, I believe, Shannon, if you want to talk about the types of buildings we have as far as prototypes.
Good evening, Shannon Lee with the Clyde Companies. We had, after we met with the neighbors, their concern was proximity to their residence. So we just mapped out, we have a draft of a plan. It's not complete yet. Working on the design now. So we're about a little over 100 feet to the property lines to the east. Most of those houses don't sit on their property lines. They sit another 20 to 30 feet over. So with the landscape buffer, we have about 4 school buses in length, if you can picture it, between the units, the end two-story units, and the residents. So we just wanted to address that.
So this isn't final, this is just a working
Correct.
draft.
Correct, and we made some modifications after we met with the neighbors, and that's how this was generated.
This is our northernmost.
Northernmost boundary.
So the northernmost building, you'll notice, is turned such that the windows face north and south. So they're not looking over Bruner and looking over that neighborhood. They're kind of looking to the north and looking to the south. Then you've got your buffer as well in that distance, because at our neighborhood meeting, the largest contingency were the neighbors to the east on Bruner Road that had their concerns. So we're trying to address those. But that's just to kind of show a typical setback.
Since you're here, the 100 feet that you're talking about,
Yes.
is that building to building?
Building to property line.
Building to property line at the homes?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
all right.
Yep.
We also have our biologist and our civil engineer. If you have any other questions for the team, we're glad to answer any questions you have.
All right, questions for the applicant. Lance?
No, not right yet.
Newton?
No, not yet.
Stan?
So, one of the things I didn't get a chance to look at, if you can run back that slide once again, sorry, Jeff.
That one?
Yeah. So, right now you show no planned exit out to Brunner?
This isn't a site plan, this is just
This is just the
setbacks for the
theoretic.
buildings.
Okay.
So really, for the
So that issue
audience to
hasn't been
say,
solved?
you know, how far away are these buildings gonna be right on top of Bruner Road, and there
Okay.
is setbacks. Again, we're going straight zoning, so we're gonna have to meet the land development code on tree preservation, setbacks, the whole bit.
All right, so we haven't addressed
No.
access and egress and all that good
We
stuff.
intend to submit our site plan before the city council meeting, so
Okay.
they're not making decisions in a vacuum, and so the neighbors can see what's planned. But 3 of the commissioners have stated publicly that they do not want Bruner Road paved from Madeline to Clyde Morris and being used as a cut-through or
Yes,
whatever.
yeah, I understand that. I had heard that there were concerns about traffic, and that's what I was kind of trying to figure out. I mean, I would think you want 2 means in and out of there.
It's
for
a large
safety.
enough subdivision that I would think that for life safety and other reasons,
Exactly.
you'd want more than one. Clearly, the main entrance is gonna be on Clyde Morris, and it is gonna be gated, so there will be a setback of that gates for stacking purposes.
Right.
And there'll be, you know, DXL lane to go in there and all that.
So if we did do something to that stub of Brenner that's there, it'd be controlled access also. It wouldn't.
Oh,
be-
yeah, everything's gated all the way
Yeah,
around.
yeah, so we wouldn't
Right.
have a
Right. Nobody's
racetrack
cutting
going through
through.
there or
Yeah,
anything.
right.
All right.
Tom?
Let me jump back to your traffic engineer there from Lassiter. As I understood it, and we aren't privy to your traffic analysis at this stage of the process, but it sounded like what you said was there are chips generated on Bruner Road.
What I'm saying is that based on the network, if there's an access there, that's what that trip will be. That's the projected trips on Bruner Road, if there's an access on Bruner Road. However,
How many were there?
What? 100
in the morning, 28, in the evening peak hours, 34.
Okay. All right.
So that trip, if it's not available to that, of course, they will go to Clyde Morris, go north and turn right, Madeline Road, go east.
Yeah, it's amazing what people decide to do, though.
Well, if it's not there, you'd have to drive off the road.
Hey.
One of
Not that
the
we have to
comments,
report
speaking
on
of Bruner Road, one of the comments received at the neighborhood meeting was frustration with coming out on Bruner and trying to turn left with the traffic coming up Madeline.
Right.
If you had a Bruner entrance, they would really be people that are going to turn right onto Madeline, because it wouldn't make any sense not to come out the Clyde Morris exit if you're going to Clyde Morris. So we don't think it's going to increase the number of traffic, people trying to turn left onto Madeline, that these would be going right and going east.
Yeah, I
It's not
appreciate
really
your
a-
comments, because I when I was down there, I drove down Bruner Road, and it took me a while to get out of there taking a
Yeah,
left turn.
I looked at it even at noon today, it was kind of interesting.
But there's not a lot of reasons for people to turn right on Madeline. Where are they going? To Nova or home? So I don't think people leaving this apartment complex are gonna turn right on Madeline unless they're happen to be going to Nova.
Yeah, I don't know. So that means you're going to turn left.
Like Clyde Morris, the
On
main
Clyde
entrance.
Morris.
Oh,
Well, they're
from
turn
Bruner.
right or left on Clyde Morris, or if there's no Bruner access.
Right, gotcha. Yeah, if there's a Bruner access. Okay, thank you.
John?
You've answered partially what I was going to ask in regards to the 3 choices. You're leaning toward choice 1, the 75% office, 25% residential.
That was a scenario under the current future land use designation, what could be built there. What we're proposing is 100% residential, which we think is a better alternative. So those 3 scenarios were the scenarios currently allowed if this wasn't approved. another developer, not us, 'cause
Okay.
we're in the apartment business, another developer would put commercial residential mix. and
How
generate
much-
more traffic.
How much higher would that be again? I know you're going from about 10 units per acre, so that's gonna go up. What would that be now with the new? How many units per acre would you be able to do if you did it all residential?
If we get approved, it'll be 10.9 units per acre.
Okay, all right. And one of the concerns obviously is the distance to the existing residential and the distance that you have from the existing residential units. What kind, is it gonna be like fence, vegetation buffer that, I know you don't have finished engineering done
Right.
on what it's gonna show, but what would be the scenarios that you would use to incorporate giving the existing residents more privacy?
Right. So there will be there will be a gate, there will be a buffer with that gate,
Mhm.
and then just north of the northern point there is a tree preserve. And so that will remain, that's actually a conservation area. And again, we've got the 100 feet between the building and the property line of the folks on Bruner. And in that will be natural vegetation, planted vegetation, and a gate.
What
I mean,
kind
and a
of
fence.
is it that you're looking at? Is it a chain link fence, a PVC fence?
It'll be a wrought iron fence.
Wrought iron?
Okay, so it's gonna be able to be seen through?
Right, but it'll have vegetation.
Okay,
Yeah.
how thick is the vegetation barrier in the thinnest point?
At least a 20-foot landscape buffer, so
Okay.
nothing will be thinner than that.
And it'll be, well, you're gonna have 3 stories. How high do you plan on having the vegetation? Just fence line?
Well, just remember the ones on the end are 2-story.
Right,
So if we
okay.
had it turned north and south, the things looking over to one, they'd be looking out the side window, you know, not the balcony or the.
So, what, are you gonna just have up to the fence?
We'll have 20-foot trees. I mean,
Oh, you're gonna- well,
yeah,
you're gonna
there'll
have-
be- well,
Can you,
there'll be
can you
some
come
vegetable
up,
buffer.
just so she
Yeah,
can,
sorry.
that's fine.
Yeah, distance analysis.
Yeah, there'll be a significant buffer, at least a 20-foot at every given point, and then landscaping materials and trees that the city approves and requires
Okay,
will be installed.
all right, thank you.
Mhm.
I have nothing. So if we're good with Jeff, any other questions for Penny before we open it up?
Yes. So whenever we get down to the entrance off Clyde Morris, are you gonna ask them to do a turning lane? I mean, I already understand you're gonna have some kind of a snaked way to stack up traffic, try and get through the gate so they're not hanging on Clyde Morris.
Happy Cruise Planning.
and-
So Clyde Morris is a county right-of-way.
Right.
So if the land use and zoning were approved, and part of their site plan submittal would be a traffic impact analysis, based on that traffic impact analysis, and coordination with the county would determine what kind of improvements, to the access would be required on Clyde Morris. I don't have that detail at this point, but it would have to be approved by Volusia County and the city of Port Orange based on the traffic analysis.
That's the traffic entrance to be named.
They would
like
likely have to have decel lanes, obviously, you know, a turn into the property. General, I mean, that's just general safe access. Any additional improvements would be determined based on the traffic impact analysis in coordination with the county.
Let me just put this out there. If you're leaving this site or leaving the current Walmart or Cumberland Farm site right now and wanting to go south on Clyde Morris, to me, it behooves me to go down Burner Road or go out onto Madeline and catch the light to make the left to go southbound. And if you have this entrance right there, somewhere right around that curve on 45, 50 mile an hour Clyde Morris during peak times, trying to make a southbound turn, just putting that out there, you would wind up maybe with a U-turn lane somewhere to make a U-turn on Clyde Morris, and
Not
Maria
necessar-
knows how
yeah.
much she loves her U-turn lanes.
Not
Don't get me
necessarily. I
started.
mean, the county has separation requirements. There's existing driveways, so they're not going to allow a driveway too close to an existing one. They're also not going to allow it in an unsafe location on the curb.
Anything else, Lance?
No.
No? Tom, John?
I'm good.
We good? Okay. comments from the public. Who would like to come up first? Come on up, Wayne. Please state your name and your address when you come up to the mic.
I'm Wayne and Carol Smith. We live at 1196 Stillwood Court, right off of Bruner Road, for 30 years. We knew this was coming, and in our 30 years here in Port Orange, we've never seen y'all turn anything down. It's been development, development, development. And y'all have controlled it well, and you've done everything right to make it look good and proper. But when's enough? When's it going to stop? There's 35 acres of woods that they're not making any more of. And Bruner Road can't sustain the traffic. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was short and sweet, Wayne. What's wrong with you? Wanna come up?
My name is Richard Hyde. I live at 1189 Stillwood Court. And right now we have two subdivisions, the Viking and Sandalwood subdivisions, that use Bruner Road exclusively to enter and exit ours. We have no back way out, okay? It's the only way. If you allow this new development to use Bruner Road is still 2 lanes going down to Madeline, which is 2 lanes. If they have that as the main exit, they had 3 entrances and exits on Bruner Road on the plan that I saw from a neighbor of mine. You're going to have a potential of 800 more cars in that subdivision, or in that apartments. You've got 300 cars already using it between the 2 subdivisions that we have. In the morning and in the afternoon, you're going to have gridlock. Another concern of mine is on the corner of Bruner and Stillwood, we have a retention pond. During heavy rains like we've had the last couple of days, it fills up. It has nowhere for the water to go. What it does is run over Bruner and goes into the swamp over on the wooded area, which seems to work okay right now. But if you once you develop that, where's all this flooding going to go? Is it going to go back up into the neighborhood? It's something that Port Orange is going to have to address at some time, either now or after it floods. The planning I've seen so far has been excellent in Port Orange. I have no complaints. They're going to develop that property even though a lot of people don't want it. It's money, and that's what it's all about. It's taxes. So be it. But they should be either like they did at Walmart, either a fence or a wall or something down there to separate. Bruner Road right now is a residential road. It's not Tomoka Farms Road. It's Bruner Road is a little entrance and exits to 2 subdivisions. If you clog that up, there's nowhere to go. We have no alternate route. And that's all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert?
Council members, Robert Reinhagen, 1425 Dexter Drive, Port Orange. I would like to elaborate on some of Ms. Cruz's comments about the comprehensive plan, about this amendment not being consistent with the policies of the comprehensive plan. And objective 3.1 in the staff report says that maintaining land for non-residential uses. Ensure that the amount of land already designated for non-residential uses does not decrease. Policy 3.1.1, retain designated commercial and industrial development areas for their proposed uses, unless such uses have been planned to be accommodated elsewhere. And the planning people have not said anything about this alternate use, where that would be. So I would say that they have failed to do their due diligence and shouldn't even bringing this forward at this point until they know what other land is going to be devoted to commercial industrial uses. And I have seen with previous commission actions or council actions that there's a chipping away at commercial spaces. And I think we need a better focus on maintaining a balance between jobs and houses. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Robert.
Anyone else? All right, any last comments from the commissioners?
Sure.
Lance?
Since I've been sitting on here, you know, again, I'm all about the buffer. I'm all about the buffer between the people who've lived here for a long, long time and the people who are now coming. I'm gonna say that I don't want to see any of this particular project go on to Bruner Road whatsoever. I don't think Bruner Road is any place for this project, and this project needs to be completely blocked off from Bruner Road. Their access needs to come off of Clyde Morris, or however many accesses it takes to come off Clyde Morris, but not off Bruner Road. Now, we already know that the city owns the property that's next to Bruner Road on the other side for storms and so on. So adding more traffic to this road during a storm could become an issue when the city's trying to use this as a space for storm debris. So I'm all about the buffer. I'm all about the product. I think the product is actually a very nice product for this area. It's the least amount of impact. I firmly believe it's the least amount of impact versus commercial. And to Robert's comment is, I honestly believe we have too much commercial in nodes in Port Orange at the time. We looked at how long that food line sat empty for however many years. That particular area has been struggled with the commercial node, and I don't believe a commercial node is the right spot for this when we have it right next door with the Walmart or whatever it is, and the out parcels that have already been laid out. They're not selling, they're not doing anything, and I don't believe that putting in another commercial space and creating a whole bunch of more trips is going to be good for this site. So again, I kind of like this product. I think it's the least impact. I'd like to see when the site plan comes in that we don't impact Bruner Road, or that we don't we create that buffer like they have laid out.
Newton?
First thing is, Mr. Jordan asked about the traffic calculations for Bruner Road, and your traffic engineer had those readily at hand, so that has been thought of, obviously, because they took time to do a calculation on it. And I'm always quite often critical of the traffic calculations, the traffic engineering, what people are going to do, what direction they're going to drive their car in, so on and so forth. And I looked at the chart that was that the developer provided us, and it's like the absolute worst case scenario that they would put some type of a big box outlet store in there versus the least amount of cars that are going to come and go from a residential facility. And that just seems like a little bit of a hard sales pitch to me. But overall, my pressing thing on this is this adds 400 roughly, 381, 91, 400 roughly.
384 units.
384 front doors to the community of Port Orange, over and above what is already in our future land use, over and above what is already planned to be built out. That's 400 more front doors with the 2.3, 2 point whatever average residences per front door, people per front door, ostensibly a lot of car families, 2-car families. If it's a traditional family, or if it's extended family, there's still at least probably 1 car going to be there. I think this just adds too much density to the core of our city, and that's where I stand on it, because I think it just adds too much density. I haven't had anybody approach me favorably with this project at all? What do you mean, more apartments is the comment that I get, or are they building condominiums? There's just not a desire to add that much more residents to the community. And I just think this is a little bit too dense.
Stan?
I think my biggest thing is, right now we don't really have an idea of where the entrance and exits are going to be, and that's obviously not appropriate for what we're talking about now as far as the zoning and the land usage. So that'll come later on. Makes it a little bit tough. As far as the density, I mean, if they've got the studies that's showing 93 to 95% occupancy within 5 miles, obviously there's a need for the housing.
I won't deny the need for the housing.
And this is less of a traffic generator than what you're seeing if you had a mall type operation or even office space. And short of them saying that they're going to move from Gainesville to move their headquarters to Daytona, it doesn't sound like there's anybody banging down the doors to build an office complex there either. And the other thing is it's really up to the owner of the property what they want to put on there. And if that's their idea, then does it fit what we've set forth in the various codes? And it looks like it does. It looks like it would be better than some of the other options. And again, the traffic generation that we've seen is always a little iffy because it just doesn't make sense that you're only going to get 29 cars. I can see somebody out there at the clicker going, no, there's 35, let's call the city. So that's always a little bit crazy on that one. Those are my thoughts right now.
Tom?
Yeah, I've been looking at this real closely because I go back and forth, to be honest with you. The balance of commercial, we've got issues with existing commercial properties there not being used. I mean, I understand that. The property, the drawings look really, really nice, and all the renderings we see are always really, really pretty.
Nice.
But that has nothing to do with what we're deciding on today. Again, as I said, we aren't privy to the traffic access mechanisms. That's well after what we get here. But obviously, Bruner Road is anticipated to be a entrance and exit out, and that concerns me immensely. It really does. I'm not sure I want more apartments, but I also don't want commercial. And I've had 3 people contact me about this. Again, like Newton said, 3 people that doesn't sound like a lot, but in our business, that's like 99% higher than any other project we get. Nobody ever talks to us, excuse me, beforehand. So for 3 people to reach out and say something is quite a bit. So, and they were all negative. Of course, they didn't want anything, but they really didn't want this. So, I'm just concerned about putting this on this parcel without really knowing what we're doing to traffic. That's really my big issue, and I don't have any say in that. That's the problem.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've got a comprehensive plan which says don't take away commercial land.
I will tell you that, so I met with Shannon and Jeff in person, and Bruner Road and access to Bruner Road was one of my biggest things that I approached with them as well. And they did say they're willing to look at 2 Clyde Morris entrance and exits instead of going out onto Bruner Road. So it is something that they're considering and they're looking at.
Well, then you have the question of whether Volusia County will allow it, and where they'll allow it. We have no control over that either.
Yeah, we have no control
No
over that.
control over where those entrances are going to be. And that's frustrating too.
Yeah.
But I also don't want empty land sitting there, and I don't want commercial sitting there empty either.
I did just want to say for the record, when we are at this phase in the review process at land use and zoning, we are required to do a traffic analysis. That's documented in the staff report on page 5 and 6. We are required at this stage in the process to do the worst case scenario. That's why we do theoretical max. And at that worst case scenario, we were analyzing a development of 560 units. They're proposing 384. And at the worst case scenario, it was a significant decrease in traffic. So I just wanted to, for the record, state there is a traffic analysis in the staff report. It is required by state law to be worst case scenario. And then as far as, you know, not having control, yes, Volusia County does have the ultimate say, but we have a very good partnership with Volusia County, and we work very closely with them. So we're going to be right there at the table with that, making that decision and make sure that there's not something that's not safe for our community.
You know, I appreciate what you're saying, Ben. I really do. I mean, I understand that we only have certain control, but yeah, we tend to have good relationships with the FDOT too, and we end up with a mess on Dunlawton that nobody likes. We all
Not as close as the county. We work very
well,
closely.
yeah, exactly. So I appreciate what you're saying. I really do.
I just wanted to make sure the records say we did do a traffic analysis. at
Yeah,
the
I just personally, I've seen the detailed analysis where they run how many routes are going to be on each little segment of the road, and I don't know if I believe that. I don't. People are people. People are going to do silly things. They make U-turns where they're not supposed to make U-turns. They don't read the signs, and you know, it's frustrating. So we try to plan, and we try to use, you know, what you guys are presenting here. What we're saying is going to be this great product, and traffic's not going to be bad, and we only have 30-some trips, and the reality never seems to quite work out that way, and it's frustrating because all we're able to say right now, really what we're saying is, we're going to allow somebody put in 300, what'd you say, 64?
384.
384 units. It may look like this. It may look like, I don't know. We don't know. We don't know what it'll look like. So that's really what we're down to, is saying somebody can put 384 units. Because they may turn right around and sell it. It may not be them that actually does the development. We don't know.
Yeah, no.
It's just me.
Because ours is just the zoning.
Yeah, exactly.
John?
Just to reflect on what the past commissioner said, we are on the very first step of development, and we're just voting on something that's just the beginning step of what the outcome of the developmental stage is going to be. And after this, you're in great hands with the building department and community development, how they're going to foresee the development of this in Port Orange. It's going to have a engineer design it, parking lots, buildings, and so it's going to be closely monitored and approved by the city as well as other agencies to make sure that this is something that the city wants. So we are at the first step, and from what I understand, the concerns in regards to a vegetation barrier, traffic studies, these are the concerns that were brought to our attention from you. And at this point in time, they are being addressed. Traffic analysis is, in fact, looking like it's being reduced. And I go by Clyde Morris quite often. I happen to live off of Taylor Road near the high school and the elementary school. So if you want to see traffic, you go on Taylor Road near Hensel during school hours and pickup. That's traffic. So based on what I've heard, it's not going to be such a large impact. And you are right, the owner does have a preference of what he could do to the property based on what the zoning allows. So as I drive up and down Clyde Morris, I've seen that empty eyesore of a Lions supermarket, and even some of bare spots, landscaping, brown patches, and it is an eyesore. And I personally, as a resident of Port Orange, would rather see an empty building that looks like an apartment complex like they're showing. And based on their past record, I think they're going to try to design something equivalent to what they're showing us. And they do seem eager to be working with the residents and the city to try to develop something that is less of an eyesore than what's currently going on there now. So given all the options we have available in the scenarios that we have, there are more favorable directions to what's going on now based on what the outcome could be. And I don't want a 100% commercial structure right now. I'd rather see pretty apartment complexes in that area as opposed to empty plazas. So these are my thoughts as a resident here, especially when I'm on Clyde Morris every day. And I see the same thing. And my parents lived in an apartment complex just north there, and I used to drive and visit them while they were waiting for the house to be built. And yeah, their apartment complex was really nice, and I'm safe to say that something like this is going to look just as nice. So that is those are my thoughts.
You know, the one good thing is they're going straight zoning.
Yeah.
Which means we know what we're gonna get, we know
Yep.
what the setbacks are, we
Exactly.
know what all those numbers are, and hopefully they aren't gonna come back for a variance somewhere down the road and say
Well,
we wanna reduce it down.
I say this loud for the record because these are their views and their concerns, and they're hearing this as well. So it's being re-emphasized of what the engineers are going to be doing to design something that meets everybody's needs.
And even the water retention that was brought up in the comments, that has to be dealt with in the zoning. They have
Yeah.
to maintain their own water. Now, if
Exactly.
they don't, then that's a problem they're gonna have to deal with later on, but,
Yeah.
you know, you're supposed to build that all into your plans.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, again, we're looking at, do we change the future land use, do we change the zoning? That's what we have facing us tonight.
Right.
And then what are your options? What do you want to see there? Empty commercial buildings, excessive commercial buildings, or something similar to that? So, you know, when I have a choice and I'm driving down that road, I know my choices are based on what I visually want to see.
So,
A lot of traffic.
really all I wanted to say is,
Buy it.
you're not gonna see woods. It's a
Yeah.
sad state of affairs. We cannot, this property is owned by a private owner. We cannot legally keep him from selling his property. So it's a matter of, the property's gonna be sold, it's gonna be built on one way or another. What do you want there? And at the end of the day, up here, and then in the future, the council, we literally are at the point of build outs in this community where we're picking the lesser of two evils. And I feel like it's the election. And we literally have to choose what we feel is going to have the less impact on the neighborhoods and businesses around it, and what we feel is going to have less impact. I told Shannon and Jeff flat out, an apartment complex is the last thing I want in the city. I would rather see ownership, because ownership to me means that people are involved in the community, they care about their community. After talking with Shannon and Jeff, I was a little bit more reassured because he's not known. Shannon was telling me he's, how old, 70 something years old, and he's usually out at the apartment complexes picking weeds himself. That to me is impactful. At least I know he's going to care about the apartment complex, and he's going to care about this community. I talked to them about, I don't want somebody on the third story of this apartment complex being able to look in Wayne's backyard. Like, that's a big deal to me. And so they talked about maybe they could angle the buildings so that that's not the problem. They're willing to make modifications, and that means a lot to me.
You know, we have a mix in our complex, which is interesting nowadays because I'm sure your demographics have changed dramatically over the last few years. But in our complex, we have a mix of students from Palmer,
Yeah.
who are obviously, they've already been through college and got their bachelor's degree, so they're going on for another degree. So they're not the partiers. They're spending a bunch of money. Embry-Riddle students, same thing. They're spending a bunch of money. They're not, you know, well, I guess they are partiers. based
I was
on
a real
the last-
student.
They are partiers.
We partied.
They're
Yeah, So there is that. But and then we have a mix of you know, various families, but there's a lot of elders like myself. who
Old
are-
people?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I have no desire to own a house anymore. I don't want to maintain it, and there's quite a few folks like us in our complex.
And I think because it's going to be gated too, you're probably going to find more of the older population than you are the younger population. Those gates somehow make a difference. And I'll tell you guys too, I grew up in Gray Acres, and I remember the hype when they built your neighborhood, so there's that.
Nobody wanted them in here.
They did not want that neighborhood there. My dad complained so hardcore.
Madam Chair, can I ask one more question?
Yes.
Could you come back up, Penelope? So I know we talk about all these projects as they come through the line, and again, you know, fair share is my big deal too. So the differential between fair share of the zoning that it is now versus the zoning of this property is probably far less, is it not? If in an apartment complex like this, the fair share is probably less than it would be if it is commercial, yes?
Potentially, because if there's less trips, you know, if you have less trips, you're gonna have less impact. You know, it's ultimately decided on what's actually built, not the theoretical. It's based on the transportation analysis that comes in with a site plan.
Right. And so
But they will have to pay fair share and or make physical improvements to cover all their impacts.
And basically, that's going to be within a circle of a certain amount of area around this particular project, yes?
Yeah, in Port Orange, we try to do a good job about making sure that those dollars impact the area that the impacts are
2
actually
miles, or
felt.
is that
We're
what it
not
is?
trying to send money down to Daytona or Ormond. We're trying to make, and that's why we work very closely with the county to see if there's ways to funnel even their dollars into Port Orange improvements in the
Okay.
area that the impacts are happening.
Okay,
And we have a good relationship with them doing that.
okay, thank you.
All right, if
Maria?
there's, yeah,
I just want to say, I don't think that this is a X and O, either this or that. I don't think it ends there. I think it can either stay with the current future land use and zoning, and likely nothing is going to happen to it if we don't approve this. I think somebody else could come back at another date with something that has less density. That's just too many front doors is my thing to add to the community, and I would whole lot rather wait and see something that would come back with maybe as little as 200 or less front doors to add to the community, to add to the density there. The Bella Oaks that we approved, that's on the other side of Clyde Morris from here, those are being developed as townhomes with ownership. So there's an ownership component there that does build the community better than a rental community. That's just my opinion. I think it's not one thing or the other. I think there could be something else. And
I get it. I'm super torn on this because, you know, there's so many things to consider. But I'm worried about waiting and then somebody just builds there without even having to ask us.
Well,
Big
that's not
commercial,
that's,
you know.
when I discuss, that's not a possibility at this point. No matter what
Well,
goes there at
that's
this
true.
point, it's going to have to come before this board and the city council before anything gets approved at this point.
So if there's nothing else, I will entertain a motion
Are we voting on these individually or together?
individually.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve case number 20, we're doing 2, right, first?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Case number 20-20000002.
Second.
Roll call, please.
John Junko.
Yes.
Tom Jordan.
No.
Lance Green.
Yes,
Newton White.
No.
Stan Schmidt.
Yes.
Chair Mills Benet.
Yes. Motion passes. Next one.
Make a motion to approve, oh crap, I'm on the wrong one, shoot, sorry. Make a motion to approve case number 20-60000003.
second,
Roll call.
John Junko.
Yes.
Tom Jordan.
No.
Lance Green.
yes.
Newton White.
No.
Stan Schmidt.
Yes.
Chair Mills Benet.
Yes.
It's kind of easy to guess what was going to happen in the second one because if it didn't get approved, the first one wouldn't have gone through anyway.
True.
So.
Yes.
Yeah, let them know. what's gonna
Most
happen.
of you are on my email list. I've been, anybody who has called the city and asked to be notified of public hearings, we have an email group. We've been keeping them informed of public meetings. I just want to let everybody know, since you're here right now, I will also follow up with another email, but at this point today, this is scheduled for city council on October the 20th. If anything changes, I will email you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. If you don't want to listen to the rest of the boring meeting, you may leave, or you can
Hey.
stay and join us.
I'm sure they would love staying.
What do you mean boring?
I mean, we're a lot of fun up here, but,
What do
you
you mean
know.
boring? Yeah.
I'll give you a second to pile out.
Nice choice on the car sitting in front of the building.
Yeah.
Classic Corvette.
There you go.
I know, I wanted the car.
Is the car-
All right. Case number 20-25000006 to amend Chapter 3 of the Land Development Code to add requirements for neighborhood meetings. Penny.
Hey, good evening, Penelope Curious Planning. So that's really what this amendment is about, is to make a neighborhood meeting a requirement, not just a voluntary situation. As you heard earlier this evening, the applicant for the previous item, they did a voluntary neighborhood meeting. We've been successful at this point in getting developers to do these voluntarily. When we get to the point of having that discussion, a lot of times they're looking for some specific guidelines, and we don't have that written in our land development code. We try to provide guidance, but we don't have any requirements. Some other cities in the county and elsewhere do have requirements in their actual code for this. So we decided at this point it was time to make it a requirement of the development review process. It is the responsibility of the developer to schedule and hold this neighborhood meeting. Really the purpose is to just start that early dialogue between the applicant and the adjacent neighborhood, enable them to be able to present their proposed development, answer any questions, hear comments and concerns with enough time to make any kind of modifications to their plans. The requirements would be that they hold this 21 days prior to a public hearing, the Planning Commission public hearing, the first one, if it's an item that requires a public hearing. If it's like a site plan or something that doesn't require a public hearing, then they would need to do that prior to their first resubmittal, so that they can accommodate any adjustments to their plans based on that neighborhood feedback. The code amendment has specific requirements for notice of the residents and adjacent properties. Within that 500-foot radius, there's a mail notice requirement, a posting of the property, and then a summary of the meeting required back to staff as well. This is just an example, just some maps of some recent properties as well as one that's coming up in the future of what a 500-foot radius would look like. The first one over to the left is the Springs Apartments. Basically, the guidance we provided when it was voluntary hit those same neighborhoods. So they were all included as part of that neighborhood meeting that the Springs held. Same thing with the item that was before you tonight in the middle, Osprey Point. Basically had recommended that they do this. Now it would be a requirement that they notify these communities within that radius. The one over to the right is one that is going to be coming before you in the future. PUD that's proposed in the future, and that shows a 500-foot radius there. The requirements do also require you to notify neighborhoods, even if it's in a different city. So in this case, it's going to be touching a neighborhood in South Daytona. They will be required to notify them as well. So, so with that, staff is recommending approval, and we just wanted to also let you know we did send this out to some of the engineering firms and attorneys firms that frequently propose development in the city to get their feedback. So they were all on board. Everyone's really used to doing this in other communities as well, so it wasn't something new. They did suggest a few little tweaks. We accommodated that because it made sense. But that's what we have before you and recommending approval.
I love it. Anything for Penny, Lance?
I think this is one of the best ways to get the community involved in anything that we do.
Right.
Is,
Absolutely.
you know, you get so much good feedback and what the concerns are, and I think keeping this thing out in the open is something that's really important as a whole for every project, and I really like this this particular proposal.
Thank you.
Newton?
Two things. First thing, back to your map of the 500-foot radius. If it touches the subdivision, say the Springs, believe, touch the Vineyards or Windsor Park,
They'd be invited.
when they do their mailing, do they do just the homes that fall under the 500-foot, or do they do all houses in that HOA?
So
500-foot, but then you have signs that go in every
yes,
one of
so
the
typically you invite the owners within the 500 foot is what is the requirement, but you also then would notify the HOA. So through the HOA, everybody would get notified, and you have sign postings as well.
Okay,
And it has worked with other ones. So we did that with this particular one as well as with the Springs. They invited the particular ones that were within a radius, but they did contact the HOAs, and everybody in the neighborhood found out. I know, I spoke to them all.
It's okay though. I know I've seen that, especially if there's an opposition to it. I just would rather see that they have to send a postcard to anybody in that affected HOA. I deal with HOAs in communities, and I find quite a few of them. You can't find anybody to even get the HOA docs, which we have to get for our buyer as part of the transaction. Sometimes it's very hard. They don't really have an active HOA. Some do, some don't. I would like to protect the ones that don't particularly have an active HOA to spread the word. You know, and then there's other.
But they would still get the mailer, right?
No, they would only get the mailer if they fell within the 500 foot.
Well,
so what I'm
I mean,
saying
how
is that
far do you want to take it, dude? I mean,
So we were
Yeah.
trying
But if
to.
they don't have an
Yeah.
HOA, they'd still get a
So
mailer.
we were trying to find a balance between, you know, this is a new requirement. Before we've been getting people to cooperate voluntarily, and even with that, with a similar kind of situation, everybody talks. If your neighbor's notified,
Yeah.
trust me, they find out. I speak to the entire neighborhood at some point, multiple times.
Okay.
So, and like I said, the property is also posted. So people are going to, and we're requiring that 24 by 36, similar to our big yellow signs
Yeah,
posting.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
would.
really are.
I will settle with that then. I just.
Thank
I
you,
feel
Martha.
you.
That's fine. I just want to make sure that everybody that should know knows, and I know that quite a few of these little don't have anybody.
Come to my
Second
neighborhood,
thing,
we
I would
have
like
one.
to see. I would like to see just 12 more
You're looking at your
invitations go out.
garage.
There are 7 planning board members and there are 5 city council. I would like to see that these people that we know that there's going to be a community meeting and are given the option to attend.
I like
The
that.
way I read that in the proposed ordinance, it would be the district.
So the reason we
district-
did that was for sunshine regulations.
we can't
It's
be
not
there.
a
That's-
noticed
yeah,
meeting
that's
as
the
far as
problem.
like it's not advertised in the Florida statutes. That's why we didn't say invite all the city council. We said that you need to invite the one council member that the property's district
Yeah,
is in,
right,
that
the
which
district
district it's in order to make sure that sunshine law is not violated.
Well, what if all 5 of them show up?
They just can't talk about
yeah.
that item.
Yeah.
Well, they can. I mean, they can show up
But
because
we didn't
2
want to
of them
make sure.
showed up to the Osprey Springs
Yeah,
one.
But we
so
want
you
we
just
didn't want to
can't-
we didn't
you
want to
just
make sure our
can't
regulations.
Talk to each other
Right,
while you're there,
right.
and you
Created
can't
that.
discuss it outside of the meeting. So that's a poor. I
So
think
we could
that's-
go.
I think it's a poor excuse to exclude us by not notifying us.
So the other thing is when we get these applications in and they're going to have a neighborhood meeting, we put it in the city manager's weekly report
Yes.
as well. So it's
But
out.
we don't get that report unless we go and dig it up off of the website. We used to
You can
get it.
subscribe to it, can't you?
Well,
Yes,
no,
you
you
can.
can't.
I believe-
No, you cannot subscribe to it. Because I have tried multiple times and I've been told by the clerk's office that they can't do that anymore.
You've been
The
blocked.
point of
Oh.
the, but you know, Newt, I hear what you're
Called
saying.
restraining
The
order.
point of the meeting is so that the neighborhood gets to talk with the developers and they exchange ideas.
Blocked.
Right.
And hopefully they improve the product that they're
Yeah.
gonna bring
Before
to
they
us.
present it to us.
Yeah.
So I mean, the fact that we aren't getting the invitation is not.
Well, I would like to be invited.
Invitated.
Invitated,
He wants
yeah.
to be invitated.
So you
yeah.
got
So
it.
we
I get it, yeah.
so like I said, we wanted to make sure our regulations didn't create a sunshine violation.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Like I
get
said,
it.
this properties are posted. It's going to be in the weekly report. You know,
So we just need to pay better attention if we want to go.
but we didn't want to make sure that the regulations we were creating was going to create an issue.
What,
But we can.
is there any?
I subscribed to the city manager's newsletter, but it was a while ago.
I used to get it, but then they stopped it and told me they couldn't subscribe us to it anymore.
Maybe we could look into
Oh.
it being sent at least to
So-
the planning commission since it deals
Well,
with
if
development
it's
items.
in Tim's report, maybe then.
I don't
I don't
even
know how that
get
would
Tim's
work, though.
report anymore.
And we also have the interactive development activity report on our website, and everything real time is being updated. When applications get submitted, you have them when we have them. We update status, you know, of
Got
things.
it.
Well, I was
So
going to
there's
ask you about.
multiple ways to.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Would that be a part of that
We could
list
look
that it
at
would be on
adding
there?
that as another notice at the neighborhood meeting
There'll be a
scheduled
neighborhood
for.
meeting because that's notifying the public in another manner that
Mm-hmm.
we're already trying to get everybody to use anyway.
I mean, but
You just gotta read it.
could they have this meeting before they ever even make an application to get a feel, say, hey, we're thinking about building this project here, we'll go to the community and have a meeting and before they ever submit anything, or
I mean,
this is
they-
something
they-
after
they
they submit an
could.
application, right?
They could. The requirements are written for actual applications. We're not going to require it before they submit it because we don't really have an application to act on.
Right, right.
If they wanted to, they can. Our requirement is that it has to at minimum be at least 21 days before it goes to planning commission so that there's enough time for them to make those modifications.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But they could do it sooner than that.
Right, right.
Stan?
You know, it seems like it's just a good way of codifying this so that everybody understands, here's the rules, this is how we do it. We really want you to make this plan, so yeah, I think it's a good idea.
I'm good, yeah. Thank you. That's a
John?
great idea.
How many times have we had meetings where people said, well, I didn't know this was happening, and here I am. This is gonna eliminate that, so everyone's gonna be told what to do.
I don't think
or
it'll
what's
eliminate
going
it,
on.
but it will help it a lot.
This is similar to steps that you have to do for a variance. You have to do the mailing slips, you gotta do the whole
The
self-address.
notice, yes, not the meeting, but the
Right.
notice, yes.
Yeah,
and
but-
that radius comes
and
from
that's
a
a
similar.
great idea.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I know other communities have a smaller radius. We decided to go
Right.
with the standard larger radius that we use for other applications.
I
Now,
like it.
what if an area is involved with the homeowner association? And will you send a letter to the HOA or just concentrate on the 500-foot buffer?
So if you're in the 500-foot buffer, your actual property, you would get a notice.
Okay.
And if that lot is part of an HOA, the HOA would also get a notice.
Yeah, okay. I'm ready to vote.
Got it. Yeah, I thought we'd have been voting 10 minutes ago. Look at you guys.
Everybody's pretty excited about the idea. That's a good idea.
I will make a motion.
Do we need
I will
public
entertain a
speaking?
motion.
Do we need a?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, public. Jesse, Robert? No? You good, Robert? Jesse, nothing to say? You sure about that? Okay. I will entertain a motion now.
I'll make a motion to approve case number 20-25000006.
Second.
Roll, please.
John Junko?
Yes.
Tom Jordan?
Yes.
Lance Green?
Yes.
Newton White?
Yes.
Stan Schmidt?
Yes.
Chair Mills Benay?
Yes. All right. Commissioner comments. I'm going to start with John.
Well, you know, I had two things
Set the
on my
time.
mind.
Set the timer,
No.
Shelby. No.
Well, maybe because of this glass or something, because I'm peeking in here. Is it just this monitor, or when there are maps being shown on your monitor, is it grainy and hard to see? Or
Yes.
is it just me?
It's grainy and hard to see.
Both.
Now, do you say you guys are having an IT department doing some kind of work in here?
Yes.
Is that involving replacement of the monitors? Or?
I know that is a goal at some point. I know they're doing upgrades starting tomorrow with some
Okay.
of the tech in here, and then I don't know if the monitors are included, but that is in their
If
plan.
if it's driving me nuts, it's got to be driving the city council members nuts because the maps and I'm thinking it's time to upgrade my.
Well, you are old,
my
but we'll
glasses, so-
digress.
All right, well, believe it or not, that's all I have to say. Everything else is fantastic.
Awesome. Tom?
I have nothing to say except thank you, staff. It's been good work. Really good stuff. Thanks.
Stan?
Nothing new.
Newton?
I would like to say if we could get that city manager weekly letter, if you're still
I think
get-
she
if-
said she's going to work
if
on
you're
it.
still getting it, because there's a difference between something being published on the website and you have to go there and look at it, and
just appearing.
something that shows up in my email that I'm going to look at. Even the newspaper has a method of sending me an email every morning to tell me the top stories in the News Journal every morning. So
That would drive me nuts. I think she
Didn't
said
say
she's
I-
going to work on it.
didn't
so.
say she did. I just wanted to encourage it.
Okay, got
Thank
it. Lance?
No, I just want to say that overall as a whole, I think the product that our planning department and our people are putting out is a great product, and we continue to just get better, and couldn't be more pleased with the direction that we're going and the things that we've gotten done this year so far.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think we have an amazing staff and we get it done. Robert, you want to say something?
Yes, could I, please?
You can.
Council members, Robert Reinhagen, 1425 Dexter Drive, Port Orange. I wanted to remind you that the Department of Transportation, Florida Department of Transportation, is holding a public hearing with regard to the interchange trail at Pioneer Trail, and the preferred solution at this point is a partial cloverleaf. And for me, I think we really need a full cloverleaf. And you know, we see what we've got here on Dunlawton, and it's a mess. So, and if they don't do the full cloverleaf now, you know, they'll never be able to do it. They'll never have the land. And so I'd encourage you to write or go down and participate. I think it's in New Smyrna Beach at the Brannan Center.
It is.
I actually wrote in for that already because I can't attend the meeting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I encourage you if you can't attend to write in with your
So,
thoughts for
anyway,
sure.
that's what I wanted to say. Thank
Thank
you.
you,
I heard your
Robert.
comments the other night at the meeting. Did you phone in? Is that how you?
Yeah.
Did you phone it in? Yeah, I was listening to you, and you're right. Without the full clover leaf, you bring in red lights,
Yep.
and that's the worst thing we can
Absolutely.
add is red lights.
Yep. I agree.
Thank you.
So next is staff comments and I have something for Tim.
Well, that would be.
And since I can't see Tim, I'd like to see his beautiful face right in front of me.
Tim Burbank, Community Development.
Okay. So I know this is totally not your department. However, I was begged to
I
blame.
love those questions.
I was begged to bring it up at Planning Commission because
I know what this question is.
Did you read it?
Yeah.
Okay. Jackson Street between Madeline and Herbert. Supposedly it's been reported 1,000,000 times, and I had several people private message me, and then I told the guy on Facebook, like, I'll just bring it up at planning.
The biggest issue that we've got there is the size of the right-of-way in terms of along Jackson Street. In order to get a sidewalk in there, plus when you put a sidewalk in there that length along Jackson Street, you have to also account for drainage. So there is some constrained right-of-way in there, which would be very limiting to putting a sidewalk plus the drainage in there.
But there's a sidewalk on the other side, am I right? Or am I thinking of the wrong spot? There's no
That
sidewalk on
Jackson
either
there.
side.
I know we looked at Herbert Street before. We did feasibility studies there, and the issue was just the constrained right-of-way. It boiled down to having to obtain right-of-way from multiple property owners, and when you have many property owners involved in trying to obtain right-of-way, it makes it very difficult and long process then. You know, we can, you know, definitely take a look back, you know, in options there then, but when you drive down there, it is a very narrow street then, on that side then. You can see what, you've got there with the townhomes on the one side, and then you've got basically a single family that developed a long time ago on that street there. And then, you know, you've also got the historic trees that are there, because I think at one point the road kind of goes around
Oh yeah.
trees there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of constraints that you got to work with on there then. And then also too, you know, if you do a project, let's say we do through a TPO, you got to meet specific guidelines in terms of sidewalk width being at 5 feet there. So in terms of
That's not something you can get like a variance for or something because it's just not feasible.
not with
No.
Well, even
FDOT.
from a public safety standpoint, though, Tim, could we lower the speed limit through that stretch as far as the police?
What is it now? It's 35,
is it
isn't
20,
it?
It's what, 25?
25.
It's 25.
I know, but it's a tough road. It always has been.
Okay.
It's always been. Over. But I mean, we're talking about school kids walking down the street.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, lots of school
Well,
kids
there's no
down there.
sidewalk, well, Jackson Street all the way south down to Dunlawton. I mean, there's
Yeah,
that
that's
much
right.
shoulder to the ditch. I mean,
Yeah.
I walked down a dirt road on Jackson Street for 30
Uphill
years.
both ways.
Uphill both ways,
In the
6 feet of snow in
In
Florida.
hurricane winds.
Quit your squawking.
Hurricane winds, right?
Hurricane winds.
Yeah, once I posted about the other sidewalk being fixed, all of a sudden my inbox started getting inundated. So
You get that
with
deep.
this and another one that apparently I checked into and had already been.
All right. We can take another look
Worked
at
out.
it then and see if there's any other, you know, options there
Okay,
and see what we can do.
thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Double check.
You have anything for us?
Cost much, right?
No, nothing new to report.
Well, that's boring. Anything for Tim? Anyone? Anyone except for Lance? No. I'm just teasing you, Lance.
Good to go.
No?
No Waffle House comments this week.
No.
Good? The Waffle House is empty.
Anything
You
new
can't
on-
make
Be
any
more
comments.
heartbroken.
Anything new on the gas station?
Still working with him to get that connection made.
That was the main thing that's holding him up?
Yes.
That backwards or
The back end
Which gas
access
station?
connection then. Off of Taylor.
Chevron?
Yeah, next to the Waffle House.
Oh. Yeah.
So we could legitimately put in Waffle House one more time.
He's trying to sneak it in there as much as he can.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.